Countdown to Halloween 2023, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. October is finally here. Join us all month for special Halloween presentations on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2023. Keep a close eye on YouTube alerts or you'll miss one. Celebrate October with us right here and now. Tonight's presentation from Storylink Radio. Tune of Terror. Juan tapped happily on the small drum. "Hey, mister," he asked, who was obviously in charge of the booth at the flea market. "How much for the drum?" $20, the man said without hesitation. "For an old used drum?" Juan questioned, but the man refused to bargain. Moments later, the boy caught up with his mother and the twin baby brother and sister. "Did you find anything you liked, dear?" his mother asked. No," he fibbed to her. "I haven't seen anything at all." Juan had a natural talent for music. He seemed to be able to pick up almost any instrument and play at least a simple tune. For his birthday, his mother had promised to buy him something, anything, she said, that he wanted at the local market. Still, Juan knew that they couldn't afford much. He passed by booths offering guitars and drums and a variety of the usual instruments. Then he noticed a slender, ivory-white flute that appeared to have been carved from a single piece of what? The man at the booth was cleaning the instrument with a scrap of dark blue velvet that drew attention to its fine finish. When he saw Juan looking at the flute, he offered it to the boy. At first, Juan ran his fingers over the fine, thin instrument. It was as smooth and cold as polished marble. Gently, he picked it up and held it in his hands. It felt as light as air. He lifted it to his lips. "Hey, kid," the vendor said, grabbing Juan's wrist and beefy hand. "No freebies. You want to try it, you buy it." "Well, how much?" Juan responded just as rudely. The gruff man rubbed his unshaven chin. It's been in my family for generations," he said slyly. "It was an inheritance from my late uncle. It would be impossible for me to part with it for less than..." He leaned over and whispered a price. "Oh, right," Juan laughed, putting the flute back in its resting place. "In your next life..." He started to walk away when the man called him back. "Wait," he eyed Juan nervously. "Look, I was never too fond of my late uncle, to be honest. I would like to be rid of that flute. What do you think's a fair price?" Juan made an offer of $3, which he fully expected the man to laugh at. Instead, the man accepted the offer eagerly. He then even threw in a soft leather pouch to hold the instrument in. Once at home, Juan couldn't wait to place his new flute. He tried only a few notes when his mother appeared at his bedroom door. "Sweetheart, you'll wake the twins," she said gently. "They've just now fallen asleep for their nap. Would you mind trying out your birthday flute another time?" Reluctantly, Juan slid this ghostly pale instrument into his pouch. It was raining, so he couldn't play outside, and then he had an idea. "I'll be back later," he called out to his mom and dad. Pulling on his heavy jacket, he headed for the community center. It was a large complex, complete with enclosed booths for people who wanted to read or talk. He could play his flute there. Once settled, Juan pulled out the flute and touched it to his lips. It was strangely warm. He tried a note and then another. It was so simple to play, the tone was fragile and haunting. It was a very old, very lonely place. A place of the dead. No one had been buried in this ancient cemetery for over a century, perhaps two, but in a desolate corner, under an unmarked crumbling stone, deep in the cold clay soil, something stirred. It was listening. Ponderously, it raised its feeble, fleshless hand and scraped at the rotted shreds of its coffin. Bit by bit, minute by minute, that thing scratched an opening toward the land of the living. Like a dreamer waking from a restless sleep, Juan suddenly felt uneasy. Noting that it was already dark out, he slid the mysterious flute into its plush sheath, turned up his collar against the gentle rain, and made his way home. Next morning. "Hi, hon, did you sleep well?" Juan's mom asked when he came into the kitchen the following morning. She stirred a fluffy pile of scrambled eggs in a large iron skillet while his dad buttered a small stack of toast. It was Juan's job to fill the juice glasses. While they each helped to prepare breakfast and take care of the twins, they listened to the local news on the radio. Something the announcer said caught Juan's attention. He listened more closely. "Authorities were shocked to discover that the Ridgewood Community Center was vandalized during the night. The body of the security guard was found this morning by the center director. According to early reports from the scene, every round in the guard's gun had been fired, but there is no sign of the person or persons who committed the crime. The cause of the security guard's death appears to have been a broken neck. How terrible, Juan's dad said, shaking his head. Who could be responsible for such a thing? Juan, I want you to come straight home after school today, his mom declared, obviously worried. The boy grimaced. But, Mom, I was going over to Roger's house after school. You already said it was okay. He doesn't live anywhere near the community center. She glanced at his dad, who nodded. All right. Okay, but be home before dark, she said. Roger and Jan were best buddies. They often got together after school to play computer games, watch TV, or listen to music. Juan was eager to show his friend his birthday present. Where do you see it? Juan said as he pulled the pouch from his backpack. I think it's really old. All I know is I've never seen another one like it. He slipped the flute out and held it up proudly for Roger to view. That's it? Roger questioned. That's what you're so excited about? It's gross. Gross? What do you mean? Roger screwed up his nose. It looks like it's made out of an old bone. The boy's expression changed suddenly to one of enthusiasm. Oh, but hey, wait. Maybe it's a human bone. That would be really cool. Well, can you play it, Juan? Juan answered with a short, cheerful tune, but as he ran his fingers along the instrument, his mood began to change. The music became more somber, more almost mournful. It was a dull, gray afternoon, and once again a light drizzle began to fall. But the hideous corpse, shuffling slowly, painstakingly over the sodden ground of nearby woods, paid no attention to the rain. It turned its eyeless skull this way and that as if to listen. A few rotting rags hung from its ancient bones, which were caked in the thick black mud of the grave. It had been a very, very long time since this corpse had last felt the open air. Nearly 200 years had passed since it had been a living, breathing being. It couldn't even remember what it felt like to have a heart beating in its chest, to feel air sucked in through its nostrils, to feel the warmth of human skin. But that corpse could remember the feeling of intense rage that fueled its ever-increasing strength, rage that lasts beyond a lifetime. It remembered, too, the foolish moment when, as a human, it had stolen the horse of a rich man. It could almost see the mob that had dragged it to face its accuser. It could almost taste the incredible fear that had made it beg as two men had held its arm out over a chopping block. The pitiless executioner had carried out the sentence that was given to horse thieves then, and left it there alone as the life drained out of it. And now, that hideous, revived, walking corpse remembered its dying vow to never rest until it was whole once more. It turned deeper into the woods and plodded in the direction of the eerie music, too distant for a human ear to hear. If there'd been any living creature to see the horrible thing in the failing light, it would have noticed the corpse's left arm was indeed missing. Roger shivered. That music's giving me the creeps. Can't you play something more? No, Juan said, almost as if he were in a trance. It seemed to him that no one wanted to listen. Annoyed, he shoved the flute into his backpack and stood up. I've got to go anyway. I promised my mom I'll be home before dark. Roger looked out the window. Well, it's almost dark now, Juan. Yeah, I know. I guess I better cut through the woods. Oh, no, cut through the woods. I think that's number 17 on the Scary Story Survival Tips. Don't go through the woods, Juan. The boys said goodbye, and Juan set out on the familiar shortcut home. The dismal afternoon was rapidly turning to evening. The shadows under the trees deepened into gloomy pools of black. At least the rain had stopped. The ground was spongy under Juan's feet, and soggy leaves deadened the sound of his footsteps. He became lost in thought as he trudged along. All at once he became acutely aware of his surroundings. Something was different, something wrong. The air seemed heavier and harder to breathe. He sensed that he was not alone. His ears strained to hear a sound, any sound, but there was nothing. No, there was someone or something coming closer. He squinted into the darkness. His heart began to pound. He didn't know if he should run or try to hide. In the next instant, it no longer mattered. A form stepped out of the shadows. Juan? He heard his dad's familiar voice and let out a long sigh. Oh, Dad, what are you doing here? He asked with great relief. His father put his arm around his boy's shoulder. Roger called to say you're taking the shortcut home. I thought I'd come out and meet you. After what happened last night, I don't want you roaming around by yourself. Besides, dinner's ready and I'm starving. The two quickened their pace toward home. They were unaware of the gruesome thing nearby. The thing that was working its way toward Roger's house, the last place where the flute had been played. The sound of sirens woke Juan from a sound sleep. Still groggy, he heard another sound much closer. It was the ringing of a telephone. He glanced at the glowing numbers on the clock radio at his nightstand. 3 o'clock, he moaned and rolled out of bed to see what was going on. His mother and father were in the kitchen when he got there, and he heard his father's worried voice. Arthur, what on earth? Arthur Peyton lived next door to Roger. Juan watched as his dad's face paled. He seemed to be at a loss for words. He only nodded as the voice at the other end went on. Finally, his dad mumbled something, hung up the receiver, and looked at Juan. Something terrible's happened. Roger and his folks, they... He paused as if trying to find the words. He licked his lips and continued. The inside of the house was torn up, and they're all dead. All at once, it seemed to Juan the sound of his father's voice was coming from very far away. He heard the words about how Arthur had heard screams and had called the police, but they didn't seem to make any sense. Crying, his mother put her arms around Juan and pulled him close, but he pulled away. I think I need to be alone for a while, Mom. Sitting at the edge of his bed, Juan saw his flute half out of the pack he had tossed on the floor when he came home. He picked it up and thought about how he had been so annoyed with his friend didn't like his music. Softly, Juan picked up the flute and began to play. Somehow the music soothed him. The flute felt so warm in his hands, almost alive. Outside in the night, the blood-spattered corpse turned its steps in the direction of the music. It was so near, so very near. The thing's left shoulder ached. Soon it would be whole. Soon it could rest. Juan continued to play, heedless of the loathsome entity that scraped up the walkway to his home. The putrid thing that slowly reached its single arm toward the door. You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2023. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.